The United Nations made an announcement today about the state of Gaza, and I think this is something that we have been waiting for the United Nations to do. They have declared that Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza. Now, if we want to go back to when South Africa brought Israel to the ICJ, that international court, they were providing evidence that Israel was committing a genocide in Gaza. And at that point, the court said, well, they have to do everything in their power to not commit a genocide, right? So I think people need to understand that the United Nations doesn't have the ability to enforce anything. That would come down to, the criminal court. Like they would have to come in and say, you cannot do this. But oftentimes what we find is that when they have those hearings, it is the United States representative that raises their hand that says, no. We've seen this happen multiple times when they were trying to get a ceasefire, and other countries supported it and the U.S. voted against it. The UN is declaring that Israel is committing a genocide. This is big news. It is now officially on the record, and I'm going to tell you what that means going forward. Let's go ahead and get into the announcement made here on Al Jazeera. You're going to get to hear from one of those members.
Justice ordered Israel to, quote, take all measures to prevent in January 2024. Since that ruling, nearly 40,000 Palestinians have been killed. Navi Pillay is chair of the UN Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the occupied Palestinian territory. She's told Al Jazeera the details in the report prove a deliberate genocide is taking place.
We've identified the President, Prime Minister Netanyahu, and the former Minister of Defense, based on their statements and the orders that they've given. So we have identified individuals. We have not done an investigation of all the individuals involved. I think future work by the Commission will get down to that. We're not dropping anything. Because these three individuals were agents of the state, under the law, the state then is held responsible. So we say it's a state of Israel that has committed genocide.
Don't miss out. Get the full picture.
Okay, so this is big. This is big news. But as I told you guys before, they can't enforce it. That's the thing. The UN can write a strongly worded letter. They can make a statement, but they do not have the power to enforce. And I think I misspoke earlier about the ICJ. They can't enforce anything either. So what does this mean when it comes to international law? Technically, according to international law, if the United Nations declares that there is a genocide that is happening, and the United States is complicit because we are supplying the weapons, that means that the US government has to do everything in their power to stop that from happening. Now, this is very important, and I highly recommend to all of you, if you are not aware of who your representatives are, you need to look that up. That refers to the congressmen and women, and then also, I would say local politics as well. Call on your mayors, call on city council, because cities give money to Israel too. Boston gives $10 million a year to Israel, but we can't feed everybody here. Make it make sense, right? But they now have it on record. And what I do think is important about this is that Israel, this is never going to go away. It will never go away. This idea that Israel has to redeem its reputation, that is not going to happen. People have already seen enough. Over the past 2 years, we have watched them kill children. We have watched them kill women. We have watched them starve people to death in Gaza. That is not something that is going to be forgotten. And they can try to come in with as many different narratives as they want to. But the reality is there is a genocide that is happening in Gaza. And I'm going to show you the numbers that are being reported right now by the Lancet. So now the United Nations is saying it. And I will say this to the UN. Shame on you for waiting 2.5 years, almost 3 years, come this October. You waiting this long to finally make this statement. Because I'm just thinking about all of the lives that probably could have been saved if you would have made this statement sooner. Where was the pressure? Where was the pressure from the United Nations on European countries, on the West, on the US, on all the countries that will continue to give weapons to Israel. So it's great that they're making this statement and you can have it on record, but shame on you for taking so damn long. That has to be said. Now we need to look at the new numbers because they are coming in from the Lancet. This story, I don't think is getting a lot of attention, but we're going to go ahead and definitely talk about it on here. Check this out. And we talked about this a little bit on Revolutionary Change last night. Gaza genocide death toll revised up, now over 680,000, including almost 500,000 children. Almost 500,000 children. There's no way. There's no way. If you have any humanity, there's no way this can sit right with you. It makes me sick to my stomach. And without the US, this doesn't happen. Now, the article goes on to say, let's go ahead and get into this a little bit more. I'll make this a little bit larger so people can read along with me. All right. The latest analysis published in the medical journal, The Lancet, which has been pretty accurate over the years, by the way, puts the estimated death toll far higher, and the proportion of children among the victims of Israel's terrorism even higher than the 50% previously estimated. Israel's genocidal campaign sees Gaza death toll increase. Amid Israel's wholesale destruction of Gaza, as many as 120,000 bodies remain uncovered and therefore not included in official death figures. But the impact of starvation and disease after months of Israel's blockade of food and even basic medicine has now overtaken the toll of those murdered violently by the occupation. A study by The Lancet, based on the slaughter of the first 9 months of Israeli-imposed Gaza massacre, found that the total number of violent deaths by April 2025, almost 5 months ago, was 136,000. The Lancet also estimated at least 4 indirect deaths from starvation, disease, and other causes linked to the genocide, but not directly caused by violence, for every violent death. Even using that conservative figure, the 136,000 violent deaths by April mean 544,000 Palestinian deaths from the imposed deprivation. Why is this important? Because you have all of these politicians, including, by the way, this includes Bernie Sanders. All of these politicians are continuing to say it's either 50,000 or 60,000 Palestinians that have died. Notice that they have intentionally kept that number low. In the case of Gaza, what you have to remember, as with any other conflict, there are going to be bodies that are buried under the rubble. But this goes even further. Gaza is a different situation because the people are enclosed, right? We called it before, it's an open air prison. So they didn't leave. So if there are names and bodies and numbers that are unaccounted for, they're most likely dead because they can't leave Gaza. It's not like you can say, well, they fled and went to Egypt. They are trapped there. And this is why I say, knock, knock, contact your representatives, the mayors, the city councilors, your House of Representatives, the senators. You need to, number one, let them know that the United Nations has declared that Israel is committing a genocide. There needs to be pressure put primarily on someone like Bernie Sanders because he still won't say genocide. And you need to tell them about these new numbers that have been released from The Lancet. So it goes on to say, this means a total Gaza death toll from Israel's genocide so far would be a staggering 680,000 deaths by April 25th this year, and much higher now after 5 more months of mass murder and starvation. And as lawyer Ali Jamal noted, the study also puts the number of babies and children murdered at a far higher proportion of the total than the 50% estimated previously. That means that more than 50% children have been killed in Gaza. And I say this, and I say it very clear to say this, especially if you feel that you are pro-life. You cannot be pro-life and be okay with genocide. And I see people using the Bible and all different types of scriptures to basically make an excuse for what Israel has done, but they won't tell you the truth. They won't tell you that the Israel that is mentioned in the Bible is not a physical place. They won't tell you that when they said Israel in the Bible, they said, I shall call you Israel, meaning that you are followers of Abraham. They don't get into that. And what has happened is that you have Europeans that came into an area. Granted, there were already some Jewish people that were living there with Palestinians beforehand. But you had European Zionists that came in and decided to colonize and expel the Palestinians who are there. This is a supremacy project. It is the final stage of colonialism. Now, they won't tell you this in the history books. They don't get into this. They don't talk to you about Theodore Herzl and how he's the father of Zionism, but he wasn't even religious. So when people tell you it's about having a religious space, that is a lie. They won't tell you that Israel is a secular state. It is not a Jewish state, Jewish religious state. That is also another thing that you hear people trying to push. It is a lie. So what is it really about? It is about ethnic cleansing. That's what it is. And do not let people come to you and try to tell you that this needs to happen because of the Bible. Read the Bible yourself. And shame on the pastors who are continuing to spread this nonsense. I grew up in the church. I know what it says. This idea of Zionism has been used as this disguise of religion. And by religion, I mean Christianity as well, because there are far more Christian Zionists than you may even realize. Using religion as a tool to push supremacy and the greater expansion of Israel. A lot of people are asleep. Let's go ahead and get into the rest of this here. This is what the doctor said. Dr. Gideon said here. On September 3rd, 2025, Dr. Gideon Polya and Professor Richard Hill calculated the total death toll for Gaza since October 7th. My fingers are shaking as I'm writing this. Based on all the data collected, the death toll in Gaza is at least 680,000. But even worse, 380,000 are infants under 5 years of age, 99,000 children 5 or older, 63,000 women, 138,000 men. Again, Gaza genocide death toll revised up, now over 680,000, including almost 500,000 children. And this is important because it was also announced today that Israel is starting a ground invasion offensive in Gaza right now. So put all these pieces together. The UN finally declares that Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza. You have the new numbers from the Lancet that says it's over 680,000 that are actually killed in Gaza. And now Israel enters with a ground invasion. Gaza is burning. Israel launches ground invasion of Strip's largest city. Nobody is stopping this from happening. Nobody's coming to the aid of the Palestinian people. Nearly 2 years into its retaliatory military offensive in the Gaza Strip, Israel said it has launched a long-studied ground assault on Gaza City. IDF troops have begun expanding ground operations in Gaza City as part of Operation Gideon's Chariots II. This is coming from the IDF. Gaza is burning, according to Israel Defense Minister Katz. He goes on to say, we will not relent or turn back until the mission is complete. The ground invasion marks a deepening of Israel's offensive in the Gaza Strip, which once housed 2.2 million people and has devolved into a starvation-stricken battlefield. Gaza City, previously the enclave's most populous urban settlement, is still home to hundreds of thousands of displaced Palestinian people. So let me tell you what's happening here, folks. This is it. This is the last stop before they expel all the people. This is Israel going in. Remember the ground invasion. This is the last stop. This is the ground invasion coming in to get rid of everybody else, whether they kill them or if they survive this, they expel them and Israel will take the land. I saw the other day a video on social media. Israel is bombing high tower residential buildings. I just saw videos of that, bombing tents directly. They blew up a car with a family in it. That was earlier today. If no one stops Israel from here, we go to what is called the Greater Israel Project. That includes part of Jordan, Lebanon, Syria. Honestly, according to that map, even some of Saudi Arabia. So I don't know why they acting like they're not going to be affected or impacted. But eventually the goal is to even spread into Africa. As Benjamin Netanyahu said, he said that we will then go in and liberate Africa. That's the word that they use when they mean colonize. People can liberate themselves. When other groups come in to liberate you, that means they're there to take over. The Greater Israel Project cannot happen. And if Israel takes Gaza, they'll be very close to making it happen because nobody is stopping them. And then there's this. Everybody needs to pay attention to what Max Blumenthal just said here. You'd think it would be a bigger scandal that Trump's chief of staff, Susie Wiles, literally worked for Netanyahu and helped Israel's Mossad manipulate Trump into bombing Iran. Listen to this. Max has been on it, by the way. Like, this has probably been the busiest week, I think, for the Gray Zone. Listen to what he says here.
John Ratcliffe, when he was isolated with Donald Trump to basically feed Donald Trump Mossad talking points, including about phony, fabricated WMD propaganda about the Houthis about to get a nuclear weapon from Iran if he didn't strike. He was isolated by Susie Wiles, the chief of staff. And who is Susie Wiles? Subsequent to my report at the Gray Zone citing a inside White House source, a Trump official, we learned that Susie Wiles had actually went to Israel to work for Benjamin Netanyahu on his 2020 re-election campaign. How crazy is that? America first and your chief of staff literally worked for a foreign leader? What's going on here? I mean, that's what we're unmasking, is the biggest foreign influence infiltration operation in American history that is basically taking control of an administration that says it's America first and is taking us to a very dangerous place. And everybody's concerned about it, including on the left, on the right, and we're also concerned about where we're being taken in this country.
And that is why, and Max is correct, this is very, like, they're deeply embedded in the administration. And that's on both sides, by the way. You had Joe Biden was a Zionist as well. Deeply embedded in Congress, in the White House, in the DOJ, deeply entrenched in the US government. Israel's campaign that they're doing now, to me, it appears to be very reckless. It appears to be very desperate. And the administration is under pressure because there's people on the left and the right that have a problem with this, that don't want the money going to Israel, including some of the younger conservatives as well, saying, yeah, I don't want our money to go to Israel. Just don't want that to happen. So there's the Trump administration that's under pressure, but also There's this pressure for Israel to try to wrap this up as quickly as possible before something else happens. And a lot of this could have been avoided and prevented had the international community, and by that I don't mean like just people living in other countries, but the international community that had the power to do so, if they would have done something and they did nothing, including the West, of course. All of these leaders coming forward and saying, yeah, I recognize a Palestinian state. That don't mean shit because they trying to kill all the people right now. That is just word salad. They're just offering something that'll go on paper so they can say, well, I said I supported a Palestinian state. But you continue to send the weapons. Macron, Keir Starmer. I think Spain's the only one that's now saying no. The Greater Israel Project has to be stopped. Like that cannot happen. It's like rewarding them for committing genocide. Is absolutely insane. And honestly, as an American, and I'll say it to you guys, we can never live this down. Something to think about. Something to think about, folks. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.